Hello, everybody. Welcome to our show today. I'm so glad to have you here. First, I wanted to thank everyone for tuning in to our last few live broadcasts that we had a few weeks ago. I'm really glad you came along and joined us. Today is the first in in a two-part series, kind of like what we did the last time, but today is the first in a two-part series, and the theme is called Familia. What we're doing right now with this show and then the next one is we're going to discuss and you will meet a couple of very influential families in music, very influential families in percussion, in the percussion world. And today I'm so happy and proud to bring these two gentlemen to you. These two guys are instrumental parts of Gon Bops development, Gon Bops instrument creations and our inspiration, both creating instruments and also musically. Personally, as a percussionist myself, they've influenced my entire career. And we're just so pleased to have them both here today. And like the other shows that we do, feel free to post your comments and questions. And if we can get to them, we'll be glad to bring you in and answer your questions. And let's have some fun today. Okay, so my first guest, one of Cuba's most influential drummers, Walfredo de los Reyes, has performed with many of music's legends, spanning all styles of music. People like Wayne Newton, Tony Bennett, Kachow, Linda Ronstadt, Steve Winwood, Sammy Davis, the list goes on and on. All of these great artists have looked to Walfredo to hold down their rhythmic foundation. Walfredo is also the pioneer of what we call the hybrid drum setup, combining drums and percussion together in one setup. Is inspired millions of people with doing this, and especially I see this today more than in years past. People are doing this more and more often now, and Walfredo is the pioneer of this. His diverse background and experience brings him to be one of the most in-demand clinicians and educators in the world. And Walfredo is also the recipient of the GomBops First Lifetime Achievement Award. And I'm just so happy to bring to you Walfredo de los Reyes. Say hi to Walfredo, everybody.
Hi.
Hey.
How's everyone doing?
Welcome.
Glad to be here, man.
So glad to have you.
Yeah, same here.
So much fun. Our next guest, this is Walfredo's son, Daniel de los Reyes, and he was born into an influential family of musicians. And like I said in the intro, the Reyes family is one of the most influential families in percussion. Danny is a natural talent, has paved his way to becoming one of the most popular and most successful percussionists in popular music. He's worked with household names like Don Henley, Sting, Earth, Wind and Fire, Sheryl Crow, The Killers, Lionel Richie. He's continually performed on big stages over the years. He is currently a member of the Grammy Award-winning band Zac Brown Band, touring and also performing on Zac's platinum-selling albums. Danny's also the founder of a foundation called Dayglow Music, which we will get into a little bit because I want him to explain a little bit of what that's all about, and features youth programs using percussion instruments as inspirational tools for growth, unity, and learning. Hey, Danny.
Hey, Rich. Hey, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well.
Welcome, you guys. So we're spanning the country today with Walfredo and myself on the West Coast, Danny on the East Coast. And how's everybody feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
Me too. I'm great.
Excellent.
It seems that I'm busier now than when I'm touring.
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah. So especially with all your projects that you have going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll get into that because the various things that you're working on right now, Danny, along with music, are fascinating and fantastic. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I told everybody in the intro that how instrumental you both are to us at GomBops, and been with the brand for a very long time. Helped us come up with ideas and very creative instruments. GomBops is an old brand, as we all know, dating back to the 50s.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the ideas and stuff that you've brought to the table, both of you, has really made it what it is today.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. One second, guys. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I thought I turned that notification off. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and about GomBops, but I want to get into some other historical things first with you. Walfredo, I want to start with you.
Okay.
When you were young, your dad was a trumpet player, and talk a little bit about how that was when you were young in Cuba, and how you came across playing drums and percussion, and what steered you into that direction when your father was playing horn.
Well, my bringing up was in the house that my family all were musicians. They were all musicians. I heard the trombone, my father with the scales, my uncle Emilio also trumpet. So we were, my aunt piano, and on top of the second floor of the house there was a piano conservatory. So that was music all day long. Since I got up till I went to bed, I was listening to scales of all sorts of kind. And I was a little boy, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. So, but I was listening to all that going on. My father belonged to, in those days, a very famous orchestra called Casino de la Playa, and they would put all the instruments when they went out to do a gig somewhere. All the instruments came to my house after they finished. So in the living room, when I got up like 2 or 3 years old, I could see the bass drum, I could see a conga, I could see sartenes, which are frying pans, all around. And I started messing around with all that. They wanted me to study piano, of course. You have to study piano. In Cuba, you have to study piano. But I hated the piano. I just wanted to play drums. So I was the black sheep of the family, Miguelito Valdez, a great Cuban singer, was my inspiration. And he gave me a set of bongos when I was 3 years old. I would go with my dad to all the recordings that they were making in those days. Now, I'm talking about 1936, 37, 38. And it was hard times in Cuba, but they were a very famous orchestra. So everyone came to my house. All the singers from Mexico, all the singers from Puerto Rico, they wanted to meet my dad, so they would rehearse there all the time. And I was just listening. When you're a little kid, everything you hear, it goes. So Miguel gave me a set of bongos. I started playing bongos. Chano Pozo recording dates with Casino de la Playa. Chano Pozo used to bring in his tunes for Miguelito to sing them. So I was there, listening to Chano, listening to Abuelito, which was another bongo player. So actually, I grew up with a musical background.
All around you, all the time.
Everything was music.
Right.
Yeah, and also in Cuba, in Havana, you have the carnivals, you have the comparsa going through the streets, and you're listening to that, and I would go crazy with that. And block away, they will have like guaguancó and rumbas, and you're listening and listening and listening. So that was my bring up in Cuba. Cuba until my dad decided to leave Cuba for the United States in 1939.
Okay, so we'll get. I'm going to ask you that about what
That's
prompted.
another story.
Right. Well, I'm going to get to that because I want to ask you what prompted that departure. But music was all around you, like you said, and all of your father's colleagues were around you. And what was it like in Cuba as far as the freedom to play and to go places and to perform and record at that time? I mean, do you remember that it was pretty open? Was it?
Pretty open. Yes, a lot of orchestras, a lot of bands of all types.
Yeah.
Charanga bands, which are violins, straight violins. You have big bands, which they call jazz bands.
Right.
A lot of shows in the theaters, a lot of movies. There was a lot of movie uh, uh, demand. The people like the movies. We used to have, I don't know if it's still there, but there was like probably 3 movies in one block,
Really?
and they were cheap. I used to go into the movies 3 cents. I would pay to see Superman, the Lone Ranger, an episode, and the movie, and then the musicians playing with like intervals.
Oh, and really? During the film?
Yeah. There was a government thing that if you had uh, 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 so many seats in a movie, it was a big movie, and they were beautiful movies. You had to have a musical. They used to call it like intermission, an intermission. So
Okay.
it would be like the movies is over, the musicians come in and they play, and also there were singers and stars and all that. So you did like about an hour and a half of music,
Okay.
and then that was that. So the musicians could live.
Right.
The same with the hotels. The same with the hotels.
Did you ever play those?
Oh, a lot. I played in. This was in the 50s when after I left New York, my dad went back to Cuba.
Okay.
So yes, I played many theaters, great rumba acts, flamencos from Spain, many singers from Mexico, Pedro Vargas, Toña La Negra, Agustin Lara. They would all come to Cuba, Cantinflas, and from Argentina.
Ah,
We love Argentinian music. Actually, Cuba was like Cuban music. The next up was Argentinians, the tango. We had comedians from Argentina. We had Hugo del Carril. We had, there was always 3 or 4 Argentinian stars playing in Havana. Havana was a playground
Hey, Dad.
for the tourists.
Dad,
right.
go back to the movie theater thing because I'm trying to envision this. I didn't know that. So a lot of, I guess, house bands in movie theaters, and then they would open up, and then the movie would start. They would do 15 minutes, 30 minutes music, and then the movie, and then the intermission for the next movie. The band would play again. Is that how it works?
That's it. That's it. You're right. Actually, it's just like New York was the same thing. You had the Capitol Theater, you had Radio City Music Hall, your movie, and the show, the stars, the Rockettes, the Roxy Theater was also there in New York City. They tore that down, but they had the Roxyettes. I saw Louis Armstrong's there, all the great shows, Danny Kaye, all the comedians,
And so you spent right now. You see a live band playing basically 3 times. If there's 2 movies, 3 times a band have a great time for 3 cents.
Yeah, well, those were movies where like neighborhood kids used to go to, and they weren't good movies. Nobody went there. In fact, when my mother found out that I went to such a theater, oh man, she raised don't go there anymore.
They need to bring that back. That's a pretty cool thing.
But they were good movies. No bad. They have, especially the Cowboys.
Yeah.
We loved Kenneth Maynard. We loved Hopalong Cassidy. We knew Tarzan. We knew who was Johnny Weissmuller or Buster Crab. You know, everybody was into that. And they used to sell these little cookies with little postcards inside. And you used to buy the cookies and then make a book out of the pictures. So we were the Cuban family would have supper, they would eat, and they go to the movies. Everything was movies.
How much money would the musician make at the end of the evening?
Well, that was the reason they had that law. It was a law by the government. That was the reason that the theaters had to have an orchestra. So they did the theater like I did. You finished that, then you went to the Tropicana. Then you did the San Sucio, the Tropicana, or the big casinos that were in the outskirts of Havana. And musicians to live, you needed like 3 jobs.
How much would the musician make from the movie thing?
Right.
Curious.
Do you know how much I used to make? $6 a night.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, $6.
That's
one place.
That seems like a lot back then.
But then I did recordings. I did club dates. I did a million things during the day.
When you went back.
Daytime. Yeah.
When you went back. Let's back up a little bit. When your dad decided to leave, how old were you when you left Cuba?
I was I was born in 1933, and that was 1939.
Okay, so like 6 years, 7 years old.
Yeah, I was a kid when we arrived in New York City. The thing with New York was that my mother didn't like it because she had a big home in Cuba, and then she had to live in an apartment, and she couldn't get used to the wood floors. You know, she was scared. Yeah. You know, it was my dad, my mother, and me. I don't have brothers or sisters.
Right.
So I was a little kid, and we moved to 156th Street and Amsterdam Avenue.
Oh, you were in Harlem.
Way up there.
You were in Harlem.
No, I'm talking. No, I wasn't Harlem then.
Oh.
Then Harlem was a little bit more back.
Oh, okay.
These were, I mean, it's a history in itself. If I start talking about this.
Sure. Well, you know, when you got to New York, though, your father obviously he continued playing music, correct?
Well, my dad was everyone that was starting to record mambos and boleros and Cuban style music. They wanted to use him because he was a hell of a lead trumpet player.
And from the moment that grandfather got there, he was able to work, or did he have to join the union? No. Didn't you have to join the musicians union?
Yeah. In those days, you went to the local 802, and then you had to show your papers and your first citizenship papers, and then the 5 years, and there was a lot. You had to have then they had a police card that you know, it was very controlled by the musicians union, which I liked, and I still belong to 802 and Las Vegas union, because you know you had the scales, you had to go by the scales. It was organized, and it was Petrillo, James C. Petrillo.
Just to make sure
very hard.
Just to make sure people know what the scales are the pay rates for the different instruments and the different classes of musical works that you're doing.
Right. Correct.
First of all,
when you first got to New York from Cuba, you couldn't just go and work in a club. You couldn't do that, right?
Well, the union just had meetings every Monday, every Thursday, and I think what is it for? Like twice a week. Twice a week there was meetings, and in the Arcadia Ballroom, and everybody was there. Everybody. I mean, all the great jazz players, and work. There was a lot of work. There were a lot of nightclubs in New York. Latin nightclubs were big. For instance, I saw Danny Thomas the first day he played at La Martinique nightclub. And I was sitting right next to my dad, and they presented Danny Thomas.
But go back a second because I'm curious. So you get from Cuba, you go to New York. Can you immediately go to work in the clubs?
No, you immediately go to work. If you had a name, if they knew you, they were watching for people that were leaving Cuba. Like for instance, when Patato Valdez got there, everybody was like trying to get him. Hey, you know who's here, man? They had the La Salle cafeteria, and all the musicians would go there, and at night, have a sandwich. You get your coat stolen if you leave it over there, like mine. They get together, the jazz trumpet players, piano players, everybody wanted to play Cuban music. They were asking, how do you do this? How do you do that? How's the bass line? So you were famous. Hey, you know this guy, man, he could play that Cuban stuff. So they got you. You became a name. You had a name.
But you had to become a union member first, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, that definitely.
Yeah.
Then you had to wait.
It's not exactly. Wait, what do you mean wait?
You had to wait in the area where you lived. I believe, I don't know, maybe wrong. You had to be part of the commute for 6 weeks. You had to do only club dates. You couldn't get a regular job. So that was tough. So you had to do club dates for 6 months. And then you went to the union. They did the exam also. They examined you to see how you play. The board, there's 4 or 5 guys there, and they would do that. Wow. And then after 6 months, then you're free to take any job. And don't forget, New York City had the shows, the big shows on Broadway, which they're still there.
Well, for you though, when you were that young, I mean, was there when you went to school there, when you were a young kid, was there a school music program that you were involved with, or what was that like?
The first day I went to school in New York City, I was 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I had a fight with a kid. He didn't like me. That was and he knocked my teeth out. And then we became my best friends.
Okay.
Yeah, they were because of the war coming on.
Yeah.
It hadn't started yet, but after Pearl Harbor, it was like everybody had their part in doing things and bringing papers to the garages to make airplanes in those days.
Right.
Toothpaste for the aluminum. So I grew up like with everybody. They were coming in from Europe, Germans, Jewish, Yugoslavians. I went to the Greek. The Greeks were my best friend. Italians, forget it. Italians. Are you kidding? That was a wall. They will call you up to the apartment. Hey, Walfredo, come on up. I want you to have spaghetti with the real meatballs. Everybody. I believe there wasn't the thing that is happening today.
So there was influence coming from all over the world.
It was different. And don't forget, after 156th Street, my dad moved to Hell's Kitchen, which was 49th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue.
Yeah, more downtown.
And my uncle Emilio, who also played the trumpet, arrived later, had his own band, great band all the time, and Rafael Dos Reyes, my cousin, and Maria, and it was all like that kind of thing. You belong to the church. I was an altar boy, beautiful, wonderful.
Hey, Dad, let me ask you something. So go back to when Pearl Harbor, but before that, in New York, was there like people that were leaving because they knew the war in Europe, such as Italians that did not want to be part of what was going on, Greeks, French, Irish, English that did not want to be, that were moving away from the war and going to the United States. Was there this huge influx of people coming into New York because of the war going on?
Oh yeah, sure. They were trying to get away from Hitler.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
So
They had the news on that the Newsweek Theater, which you went there and you saw what was happening, because we got into the war after Pearl Harbor, Germany, but they were already fighting.
Right.
You know, so if
I'm just trying to visualize. So there's this big immigration of Europeans of all kinds that are trying to get away from the war that's going on that we're beginning to be part of. But at the same time, so everybody's going to the major hub, which is New York. So you have all these different cultures going on in this small space. And then at the same time, you have this music that's kind of like, because you have told me before, the Jewish people love Latin jazz, and they love to dance mambo and salsa, and then you had bebop going on, you have big band going on, but you had all these different kinds of cultures going on that really loved the music, and that helped to, I guess, maybe bond everybody.
Yeah, it was because the Jewish people loved the mambo. They loved when mambo came in and they heard the first Prado, you know, Xavier Cuba, the conga, all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, they were like the Fred Astaire dance studios. They were teaching them how to dance, you know, Arthur Murray dance studios. So it was a big thing. If you knew how to dance, the cha-cha. Now, where can you find it? Where can you find the music? So you went to the Arcadia Ballroom, and there was Emilio Reyes and Charlie Ventura, an American band, and a Latin, what they call a Latin band. So, you know, you were mingled together. My dad had a gig, and the other band was Tommy Dorsey. In the band was Buddy Rich. So I would go every night with my mother to wait for my dad. And there was Buddy, and there was Sinatra, and there were the Pied Pipers waiting to go on. I used to watch Siggy Elman, the trumpet player, play a Song of India with Buddy, and I was a little kid. I used to watch it from the stairs, going up to the. So all that music, like you were saying, Danny, about the people coming from Europe that were incredible musicians, but they had their music. You went to an Italian dinner and you would hear the tarantella, you know, and the Italians singing their thing, and the Yugoslavians and the Jewish, and that is what I love. I love that. You know, I love that because I love the folklore of all the countries in the world. They all have it. Yeah. They all have their own thing.
They do.
And that's what you got to hear.
How old were you when you started actually playing in clubs?
What's that?
How old were you when you started playing in some clubs?
15, the first time. And there were big bands, Puerto Rican bands, great conductors, Nora Morales, Ralph Falk. There was the Havana Madrid was a nightclub. Right across the Havana Madrid was La Conga. So you had 4 bands already. Anselmo Sacasas, you had Nora Morales, you know, show bands, big bands. Humberto Morales, the drummer, great drummer. So I was watching everybody because I was going with my dad to all the rehearsals, you know, and I would find drummers and ask my dad about them, and then my dad would say, "Watch the bass drum. Watch how he keeps the time. Society music, 2-beat jazz. The difference between 2-beat jazz, Jimmy Lunceford, you know." So I was watching all those bands. I was watching Tommy with Louis Bellson, when they introduced them at the Strand Theater the first day. And Buddy was playing at the Paramount Theater, and Louis was playing at the Strand Theater, right? So Buddy goes up and he comes out, and one of Buddy's jokes, he goes, "Hey, who's that guy with two bass drums there?" He goes, I make it fun. Who's that guy? And he points towards the theater. Who's that guy? So he calls a guy in the wings, and they bring out two bass drums, little 18s or 20, in the platform. Buddy gets up there, crosses his arms like this, and does a solo with his feet. That it was incredible. So, but Buddy and Louie had a good relation, a great relation.
Hey, Danny, what was it like for you in New York when you were growing up, being around all of this?
Well, first of all, I was born in New York City, but I wasn't raised there, so I didn't go to New York till the 80s.
Right.
Started working with touring with a singer-songman, dancer, actor by the name of Ben Vereen. And then that's when I started actually to go to New York City for the first time. So going to my birthplace was, exciting at the first time, but it was so different because, it's the concrete jungle in comparison to the West Coast, which was so spread apart. So the first time I went to New York, I actually was tripping out. But I went to all the places that my dad said, 8th and 49th, where our family used to live, and see where Rockefeller Center was, Madison Square Garden was, where we used to live, all the different places that he used to talk about. So it was an interesting thing. I ended up living in New York for off and on for 10 years, about 10 years ago. And it's a place that it's one of those, for me, I love New York City. I can only take it in spurts because I can't live there. I love the diversity there. I love the food. I love the people. I love the energy. I'm just not used to having that much intensity in all over me all the time. So I had an interesting time when I lived there. I wanted to, I tried it, but it wasn't for me.
So you moved away from New York young, and then where did you go first?
We moved to, well, first of all, we moved to Puerto Rico.
Yep.
So we moved wherever, because the family was growing. My dad had my brother and sister.
Yep.
And they had me, and they had two other children, so there was 5. So you had to keep the money coming. So my dad would go wherever the best contract or wherever there was some security. And when you have 5 kids, you could try to wing it, but it's not good. So my dad was and my mom responsible enough that and my dad was good enough that he could go to a place with an actual contract. So he went to Puerto Rico when I spent like 10 years. Okay. So I spent my first 10 years in Puerto Rico. And then I grew up in Las Vegas. That's where I started in 3rd grade. Just like when my dad moved to New York, at that age, I moved to Las Vegas.
Right.
That's where we grew up, was Las Vegas. We grew up in the Las Vegas that, growing up with my dad in the backstages, watching, Tony Bennett and then Flip Wilson and Bob Hope and then Margaret and Elvis was there. And, everybody that my dad would play with. And in that particular time, what was really good was that every hotel had a house orchestra. And like an entertainer would go and they would take a conductor, definitely a conductor, and maybe a drummer. But most of the time they would just take a conductor. So let's just say right now a comedian comes and it's Milton Berle, and he goes to do a show, a week stint at the hotel in Desert Inn in Las Vegas. He would use the house orchestra. So the orchestra there has to be good enough to play his music that night after a few hours rehearsal, that like if they've been playing that music for years. So that every hotel had a house orchestra. So you can just imagine how many musicians there were in Las Vegas in those days. So growing up, seeing that that was a normal thing, was to watch my dad go to a rehearsal, which was, I used to see it as a normal occurrence for my dad, but it was, think about it, nerve-wracking when you're going to go to rehearsal at 3 or 4 to do a 2-hour rehearsal when you have to do a show tonight, 2 shows with a comedian and a dancer and a singer that comes on at the beginning of the show. And you've never played the show before. Just think about that. And then on top of it, it's not like just learning 30 songs. He changes the songs like whenever he wants to. So he has 1 book or 2 books, and the conductor is calling songs as the show is moving. And you have to literally pull out this chart, not only read the chart, but not look like you're reading the chart, and play the song and be part of the show, because the actor or the singer or the comedian will involve you. So if you're like this reading the chart, there's no way that you're going to be there for any length amount of time. So that's what I grew up watching.
And then you had people coming in and out of your house all the time. Well-known drummers when you were growing up, people that would just be around you, like Joe Morello or Alex Acuna and Billy Cobham. It was part of your upbringing, right? They were around you.
It was always the occurrence is whenever you come to town, to come to my dad's house.
Yeah.
And we always had a designated studio, which was always a garage turned into a studio. And that's where the drums or the double drum set would be, obviously a lot of percussion. So people would come over and they would, my mom would make the black beans and rice and picadillo, and we would eat. Then we would play, and then they would go and play the show. Whether it was Doc Severinsen or whether it was Luis Conte coming over with Doc Severinsen, or Alex Acuna after he left town, or
Alex.
Billy Cunningham, or Louis Belson. Louis Belson was like a regular.
Alan Dawson. I had Louis Belson and Alan Dawson, both of them playing timbales. And it was incredible. And Louis got up there. This was my garage. It was like a 4 a.m. in the morning. And Louis is there, and Alan had done a clinic, and he came over to my house because I told him about the 6/8.
Okay.
So he said, Walfredo, I have to go with you. So he came with me, right? So Louis was there too. And they, forget it. The solo that Louis did was like incredible. And Alan does another thing, another way, and I was watching them. And when they finished, Louis says, yeah, Walfredo. He used to call me Walfredo, but we don't sound like you. I said, holy smokes. Here I was with 2 greats. And Louis says, I don't sound like,
I want to ask you about that. When he asked you about 6/8, was he asking you because he wanted to know the interpretation of 6/8 from the Cuban vantage point? Is that what he's getting at, or?
Well, when I went to the clinic, it was in the afternoon, and that was at Bo Mahoney's drum clinic, and I think that Alan was playing with Dave Bruin in those days, so he had incredible. This man I knew him very well. He was my friend. His wife, every time I went to Boston, we would have lunch, and then he was close. We were close. I would ask him. So he does a tune and he sings it. And I was watching, So when he finished, I went up to him and said, man, that's incredible, Alan, but there's a lot more to 6/8 or whatever, that play. They call it 6/8. So he said, I'm going to cancel my dinner, but I'm going with you. So he came to my house, and that was at 8 o'clock. He left like around 6 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, but you got to hear Alan. You go back now and you hear what Alan was playing, and the teaching What a great teacher he was. He taught a lot. He taught a lot of people at Berkeley.
Yeah, he sure did.
His influence.
Rich, I think back in those days, because my dad used to always take us, just like any father would take their sons to work with them. So my stuff, my upbringing was going to the backstage.
Yeah.
And being there while he did his thing. Mind you, we would always have to, I remember getting the instructions, while he's rehearsing, you can't. So most of the time he would sit us down next to him, so he basically could keep an eye out.
Okay.
But that's a tough one, because you could just imagine, I mean, we want to run all over the place. So I just remember always meeting, like, I always gravitated towards the light man.
Really?
Yeah. I would always hang out in the light.
Where's the top? Really? At the Hilton.
Yeah. That just reminded me of something, like with you and your brother Wally going into drumming, and your other siblings. I know your brother Kamar is an actor. Did you ever feel a pull into another area besides music, or was it always very strongly that direction?
No. It was always, you do that, but you're going to do something else. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I could have been a pilot or whatever, but which I actually wanted to be a pilot. But the thing was that music was always something you just knew you did all the time.
Right.
So it was just part of your upbringing. And again, it's just like growing up being, next to an architect or a carpenter or a plumber. You're going to learn how to do those things.
Yeah.
You go to school to do whatever, something else, but
everything was music.
Everything.
I didn't know that I was going to do that,
right,
as a living, later on.
I remember Alex Acuna when he came to the house, and this guy was like 6 or 7 years old, and then he says, "Who's playing?" Because he was in the studio.
Yeah.
Who's that playing drums? Is that he named somebody, and we went in there. I didn't even know it, that he could play like that, because he keeps it quiet. I never taught him, but he picks up. So we go in the studio. It was Danny on the drum set.
Right.
Never played drum set, but man, it was enough for Alex to notice.
Well, because, hey, Rich, because what happened was, in those days, I remember this so well. So in 3rd grade, this is that first year in school here, we had a trio of percussionists that came to do a clinic. This is in my 3rd grade. These gentlemen ended up being great friends of ours. They're my dad's friends, beginning to be. We had just moved there. So they did a clinic there. And it was this gentleman by the name of Roger Rampton, Leo Camera, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name that used to own Planet Percussion. Oh my God, forget his name. But all three were incredible showroom percussionists.
Mark Barnett.
No, it wasn't Mark Barnett. It was Dale. No. Dale, maybe. But anyway, they did a clinic, and in those days, I think back, I'm talking, Jesus, this is in the 70s. So I saw them, and I didn't even put, like, this is what my dad does. And, I just saw them because they were so different. They were at school, the way they did it, the mallets, the xylophone, marimba. And so.
Timpani.
Yeah. So they gave a class, and then I remember that we had band. This is 3rd grade. And so I ended up buying a snare drum book. Can't remember. I still have it. I saw it the other day. I can't remember the name, and a pad. And so my dad tried to sit me down to give me lessons on the pad. This is in 3rd grade. I'm like a very wiry kind of kid. To contain this child and to sit him down, first of all, it's just a tough thing to do. And so he was trying to, sit me down with the metronome and, like Murray Spivak, and he was talking about like playing in time and and the bounce and release, bounce, and man, that was just like at that particular time in my life, it was just hard to digest.
Were you and your brother exchanging stuff and like?
Well, I mean, so I don't know if my brother went through the same thing, but so when I realized that my dad communicated in that way, it was really tough for him to go, come here, because to me it was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I would like bolt, because it was just a tough thing to sit me down, and it was great information. It was just the way I needed to be given information at that time. That was hard to do. So that's why when my dad says I never learned from him, it's just that it was hard we just had a different way of being able to communicate. Sure. But I would be watching him like all the time, like watching everything he did. And then when he would leave, I would be like, kind of memorizing everything and then go study. Yeah. That's why we didn't really like, you can't say, well, I taught my son for 3 years and, that's not the way it went. It was more like he would play and I would just go in and listen or watch for a while. And then I would just like turn around. Then when nobody was watching, then I would go and study.
Yeah, right.
That's how it kind of started.
Yeah, boom, boom, boom.
Well, Alfredo, so when you were seeing your son, the way he was developing, when you noticed he had that.
Well, yeah. But don't forget, I had like six kids.
Yeah.
Kamar, those Reyes, Kamar picked up a cornet one day and puts it in his mouth and goes, wow, this trumpet player from Puerto Rico that was there with me says, oh my God, this kid has a perfect armature. This lives. He's a natural trumpet player. That's Kamar. Now he's on drums. Kamar takes the trumpet, and now I get the trumpet, and he starts taking lessons with an incredible teacher that's also a player in the shows, because there were fabulous musicians in Vegas in those days. You could find from all walks, string players, you name it. So he started taking lessons, and I started taking him to the shows. He met Harry James. He met what's the trumpet player, Doc Severson. Oh, the little kid. He's like I think I'm 4 or 5 years old, and you should have seen it. He has a book. He would go in, but never. He didn't follow it. He became a movie star.
So he had his grandfather's thing. He had his he followed.
Yeah. He has my dad's trumpet.
And the other thing is that my grandfather was not only a trumpet player, but he was the balladeer, the crooner in the.
I played the violin too a little bit.
So he was along with Miguelito, the two front men. So you really needed or wanted to be a front guy, So not every musician has that ability to be the front guy, So Kamar really liked that a lot. There he is.
That's your grandfather. That's your father.
That's my dad with the band that I was saying, Casino de la Playa in Cuba in the 30s.
Right.
Now check the no lugs.
Oh yeah.
The frying pans.
Oh yeah, man. With the bands. Yeah.
That was in 1930, 38, 37.
Yeah.
Yeah. They traveled the world. They went to Puerto Rico. They loved them. They played with bands in Puerto Rico. That were the Munoz orchestra. It's like you find so many good musicians in every country.
Yeah.
In every country you go. When I did the Puerto Rican gig 10 years, we had an incredible band at the El San Juan Hotel, the trumpet corps. And there all the shows started coming in because Cuba was closing because of the revolution. So Puerto Rico went up, and they started building hotels. The Sheraton, the Americana, the El San Juan, they all had big bands and shows. That was the same thing. Big bands. If you had a big hotel, you had to have 33 musicians,
Yeah.
and you divide them. Show band, a trio here, a quartet here, but you have to have 33 musicians
Right.
in Puerto Rico in the 60s. So all the shows would come: Sammy Davis, Paul Anka, big shows, and I was the drummer
Yeah.
playing those shows and meeting a lot of good other drummers that came with the acts.
Right.
Hey, Rich. So in Las Vegas, you would go after the shows about 1:30 to 2 in the morning. You would go to the musicians union, and there would be the kicks band. So everybody in the hotels that could, they would end up going to the musicians union building and sitting in with these bands. So man, to be able to go there and see all these incredible musicians like Louis Bellson, like Don Menza, like Carl Fontana, sitting there.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Big band there. I mean, it was like such a lesson because you had the university was really good. They had good ABC band, and that band was playing in the hotel. So all the young guys were like my brother studying in the university, and then they would end up playing the subs in the showrooms. But each hotel had a main showroom with a great band, and each band had a great drummer. Full on, I'm talking full on horn, strings, the whole. And then on top of it, you had the lounges, and the lounges were you had
Rich?
You had like A and B seat lounges depending on the level of the hotel. So in like let's say a place like Caesar's Palace or the lounges, you would go see whatever. Let's say Tony Bennett or Frank is in the main showroom, and you go to the lounge and there'll be Tower of Power in the lounge, or there'll be a Buddy Rich band in the or Louis Prima in the lounge. So you're talking about like mini showrooms in the lounges.
Sure.
So also had great musicians.
Was that how you were you doing that kind of work when Ben Vereen found you, or how did that come to you?
Well, okay, so then underneath that, then you had clubs in the city that were beginning to, like rock clubs, those days discos and that kind of stuff. And you had bands that were working, and then you had even below that, bands that would do like that wouldn't necessarily work Vegas, but worked outside of the main strip area. So there would be a lot of country kind of music. And so I started doing that and playing in funk bands and playing bands that played somewhat country, definitely a little mix of that just to start. And a lot of USO clubs. I would play Nellis Air Force Base all the time. That's how I started. My first gig was like 16. So not too much older than my dad was when he started. And it was in lounges. And it wasn't, taking it serious like this is what I want to be for the rest of my life. It was just to do it because it was a fun thing and you made some extra money, But but anyway, so you had all these different workplaces that offered live music. So you can just imagine how many musicians there were in the town. And if you really wanted to work correctly, you had to be a union member. So that's why you couldn't just walk into the union unless you were a union member.
Right.
Well, what happened in Vegas was there was an influence of hotels opening up. So all the guys actually that were working in New York in staff bands, like WJC, WOR, NBC, everybody wanted to get away from New York because it was hot, it was nice, and there was a lot of money being paid. So they moved to Las Vegas and made Vegas their house, and they made a lot of money. Listen, a percussion player in Vegas in the band in those days were making 10 doubles. 10.
Now, let's explain to everybody what a double is.
A double is 10% of the main in the instrument. Let's say the scales were great, right? You're playing timpani, bells, one double, xylophone. There were families like xylophone, bells, chimes. They were family. So one double. American tambourine, Brazilian tambourine. That was a joke. I said, I can't believe it. Yeah. So if you're a drummer and you pick up a tambourine, they pay you for that. If you hit a cowbell, another double. I was making doubles up the wall. And there were guys that were playing more, they were adding stuff. Now conga, another double. Bongo, another double. If you play timbales, another double. That's the way it was in the 70s when I got there. I got there 1970 from Puerto Rico. I moved from Puerto Rico to Vegas.
But back then, Walfredo, did you know or have connection with Emil Richards?
Who was that?
Did you have connection? Do you know Emil Richards back then?
Emil
Richards.
Emil Richards. Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, man.
Because
I feel so bad to hear he passed.
He told me stories about trying to get the union to recognize that aspect of for us as musicians to get the doubles recognized and triples in the studio.
Yeah, he was the king. He was the king, and as a person, so beautiful. His wife, we were good friends. With Alex Acuña also. When we did the album, that album that's called with Louis Belson. Oh, Louis called me up, and he wanted to know if I could do this recording, with him and a bunch of guys in L.A. So I had to go to L.A., and one of them was Emil Richards.
Okay,
so Emil gets there with 4 Levi's, 4 semis.
Oh, yeah.
4 semis, and I see 10 timpanis come in, trucks of loaded cabazas. He had shakers, he had this, he had that, and he sets up and sits right in the middle, just waiting, So we start fooling around. Alex, Luis Cote was on it, Francisco Amorella was on it, and he's like, that's very good. Play that again. Wow. I had the rototoms. I said, Emil, tune them for me. So he goes, beep, 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 beep. Wow. What a musician, man. I tell you. And he had every percussion instrument in the world.
Yeah.
Everything. I think one time he got robbed and all that. But we love him. We love him. He was the man. He was the guy.
Talk a little bit about Walfredo, a little bit about some of those people that you were playing with in Vegas. I mean, I'm so curious to the like Wayne Newton or Tony Bennett, the people that you played with there, and the amount of variety.
The hardest ones.
Tony
the
was
hardest.
Yeah, the hardest ones. I remember my dad will always make a mention to the comedians were the hardest. So like Milton Berle.
Yeah.
He would always say something about Milton.
Yeah, Milton Berle was the more difficult person.
Very. He had eyes in the back of his head. He says he would fire somebody on stage if they were turning the page the wrong way.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But he had Cuban cigars, and he would take the Cuban cigars out of his pocket, say, hey, here, kid, you play really good today. Here. So he had a bunch of big George Burns, too.
Oh.
So I would watch them. They all smoke Cuban cigars. All the comedians, all the big guys. They would leave him on the piano after they finished, and I would come and cut the head off, because in those days Fidel was already in Havana. You couldn't get Cuban cigars unless you went to Canada or Mexico. So these guys had big, wonderful cohiba. They were like that, and they would leave him around. And then, but Burl had his pocket all the time, but he was very difficult to work with. Very. You had to play the drums and just be still.
Oh.
Be still. And when he wanted the rim shot, when he would say, like, take your hands to my face, bow! You had to hit. I mean, I bended the snare drum. That's how hard I played. The sticks I used were 3S military sticks. They were like that.
Marking sticks. Yeah.
And then I would put the microphone right next to the snare drum and watch him. If you didn't do the rim shot, you could get fired.
Talk about Sammy Davis Jr. I was such a huge fan of him. Such an incredible talent. What was it like to work with Sammy?
Who was that?
Sammy Davis.
Sammy, in my opinion, was the greatest entertainer ever. In my opinion. I did lots of shows with him in Puerto Rico, actually.
Oh.
And Sammy would come in and do 3-hour shows. He could play the drums. He could do the guns. He could imitate. They were all fantastic. I played for D. Martin. I did all the shows that what's his name? The comedian. They all passed. Jesus. We wait. We would do all these night shows. The comedians were incredible. Jack Carter. There's a story of Jack Carter. Let me put it in. I played Jack Carter. You know who he is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Carter. He did movies, all that.
Yeah.
He would come in, and you had to do a drum solo behind his talking. But the drum solo couldn't be a drum solo. It was just like a very sly. So he had people fired in his life. That he came in with a very bad. Watch him. Oh, he's going to fire you. Okay, so I played the show for, I think, a month. In those days, they would do 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 2 weeks. 1 month at the Destination Hotel. Last night, he says to me, Walfredo, that was fantastic. Man, you did a great job. Come up to my room. So I go up to the room where the stars are, and he has a beer in his hand. And he says to me, you want a beer? I said, yeah. And he says, here. He didn't take it out of the fridge. He gave me the one he was drinking. So he says, so now he says, hey, let me have your wallet. So I give him my wallet, and he takes out a roll of bills, like a roll like that. And he goes, zoom, takes a bill out, puts it in my wallet. And, I've been being nice, just watch it. Yeah, you did a great job, man. Kid, wonderful. Yeah, excellent. I take my wallet, put it in my pocket. I go down the parking lot, get in my car, go home. On the way home, let me see, probably $100 bill, something like that. I look in, $5. $5. I talked to another drummer, Santos. I said, did you have that thing properly in? He said, man, I threw it in his face. He was Italian.
Was that a normal occurrence when after you would play a few days with an artist, they would give you a tip or something?
Yeah, they were always. I played with Debbie Reynolds. The same thing. Debbie was incredible. She was the finest.
And just so
She
everybody
was
knows,
she was on rehearsal at 5 o'clock.
Debbie
Shows
Reno,
everything.
just so everybody knows, Debbie Reno is Princess Leia's mom.
Right.
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 But they both passed recently. So it was Debbie in those days. So
Yeah.
her drummer, who was a very good drummer, but a good friend of mine, uh, did like 2 or 3 shows, and I was watching them all the time. I played drums now. You know, the Broadway medley with every tune there is to play. It lasted like 20 minutes. At the end, she did the tap dance. She did the to bring this guy out with a chain. You know, what was the real one? She would imitate her. Forget. So anyway, Debbie was the type of person that would say, if you want a raise, talk to me. Don't talk to the manager. Talk to me. So she was very funny. She would start rehearsals, piano, drums, 5. So I would come in and say, how do you feel, Debbie? Are you okay? Yeah, well, we'll do so number a little slower because she wasn't feeling well, you know. But you had to go in the room and talk to her, which was nice, you know.
So say,
I met a lot of people. Elvis is karate uh, 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 teacher. You know, he was playing the Hilton. I was at the Desert. So
so my dad,
I did Jimmy Dean, and Jimmy had a singer that Elvis had, the bass singer, and they were always having parties at, or either at the Desert Inn or either at the Hilton.
Yeah. Danny, what were you saying?
that my dad would go into to kind of feel the entertainer out, how he or she was doing that night, to see how the tempos were going to be.
Right.
So that's an important thing for, up and coming musicians, because that's one thing. It's like, it's not necessarily the tempo that you want that was last night. It's whatever that person, I mean, they're the ones that pay. So if you have to slow it down or raise it up, and, or within the song, it's their prerogative.
That's right. And how they're feeling that night or the room they're in.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's right.
It's up to you to be flexible enough, and kind of, you got to wear many hats. Psychology is one. So you got to kind of go and see how they're doing. That's
well, with all the people that you've played with, Danny, I mean, specifically a lot of these really well-known pop stars like Stevie Nicks, Don Henley, singer-songwriters slash really amazing songwriters that have had those kinds of careers. You've had to be behind those people talking about that. That's a really interesting thing you just said, because the tempo and the way they interpret the song given on any given night, even though you might be doing the same set every night, or they may shift it a little bit. Talk about that. Talk a little bit about keeping things fresh if you're doing the same show all the time, and when you're touring with someone like that.
Like growing up, seeing that was part of like being a professional musician. So sometimes, like for instance, guys in the band that would work and get a job like the Lido de Paris or the Casino de Paris or Folies Bergère, those people played those same shows year after year after year. So I grew up seeing that is part of being a musician. A lot of times people get really bored playing the same thing, a few nights in a row, and they can't take it. But it all depends where you come from. If you come from the school that you want to, let's say right now you're playing more jazz, which is you expand on and you ad lib on the songs. That's kind of part of what you're doing. Your job is to essentially expand every night within a certain structure. But there's other kinds of music that you have to play exactly the same thing every single night. And you have to, it's not so much, I don't know if playing it and making it fresh, you just have to tell yourself that that that's what you're doing. There's new people listening to that music for the first time that night. So they weren't there the night before. So they're paying good money to come and listen to that arrangement a certain way. They're not coming there to, paying for you to expand and change it and completely give them something different. So, I mean, it all depends what kind of job it is. But fortunately, I've had the ability to do both. I'll give you an example. Playing with Earth, Wind, and Fire is a great example to this, because Earth, Wind, and Fire, people come to listen to those songs and not to change them. But at the same time, or the people in the band come from a history that we like to change things. So what Philip and Verdine and Ralph would let us do, and Maurice at that time, we would play this, and in certain places we would be able to expand. So then that will give us that freshness, whether it's starting putting a solo or changing the structure of the song a little bit, not too much. But at the same time, it's like some jobs, like I worked with Don Henley 3 years, and Don, a stickler that he did not want to change things up.
Right.
So that can be like detrimental to someone that likes to change things up. Okay. But I really, after the job, actually, during the job, I sometimes would want to change things. And I knew that if you even changed an instrument, Rich, and I know you know this,
right?
Like change the actual sound of it, the entertainer would turn around and go, well, what's going on? Why are you doing that?
That's right.
So, but I really appreciated it after I had done it. And I really realized that sometimes it just calls for exactly the same thing, but do it with the feel that you really care for that and you really love doing what you do, because that admits into the music. But the people sometimes, they pay really good music to hear that exact same thing,
right.
In different places. I'll tell you what, this happens a lot with Zac Brown Band, because people come to listen to the songs that they know our group is known for, our songs, the Zac Brown Band songs. But yet we want to play different kinds of music because we want to stretch, so to speak. So there's a fine line between doing too much of one or the other. So if we just do our music alone, we as musicians get anxious and we want to do more, right? So that's why a lot of times we interject new music within our show so we can expand and do that and get that out of our system, so to speak, and yet do the songs that we're known for.
You just brought up a point that I wanted to ask you, is the freedom that we might have or not have as compared to being either a band member or being a hired gun, right? Because you've done both of these things. I know that you and I share that with regards to playing with Glenn Fry and you with Henley, as far as having things the same every night and really paying homage to the recording. But with as being a band member, do you find that there's more of a collective ability to have that kind of freedom?
Well, first of all, let me define band member, because band member, sometimes people think that band member is just equal amounts of say for everybody. That's not the case.
Of course.
There's always a pecking order. And in this case, Zac Brown Band is Zac Brown.
Sure.
And he's my boss, and we're a band that supports him and what he wants to do. So my job from growing up, can you just imagine with my dad, and I always I'm a team player, but I realize that my job is to make sure that he's happy.
Sure.
I might not always agree with him, but that doesn't matter, because my job is to make him happy.
exactly what Walfredo is saying with all of the people he's worked with as well. I'm sure.
That's right. That's what I told him. Time.
Yeah, because when I was young, my whole thing was, and I lost jobs because of it. My job at that time, let me rephrase that. Not my job. My way of being was to always rock the boat. And you can do that in certain things when it's your group, but when it's somebody else's and you're trying to rock the boat, you're just an annoyance.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. So what's he going to do today? That he didn't do yesterday, that type of thing.
Sure.
It was a tough thing to outgrow that.
Yeah.
But finally, but you learn to be happy, be able to expand, but at the same time, give who is your boss or who is the leader, make sure that he's content and he's happy with what you're giving him.
Right.
It's I'm going to give you an interesting scenario. My dad, even though he worked all those years being reading down the charts and playing what was instructed to him all those years. My dad comes from his if you were to say his favorite is to expand, to do something that he could not do yesterday, do today. So that means that what you heard yesterday, you might not hear today. That's my dad excels in that. It doesn't matter what it is. He's always trying to do something that he could not do yesterday, wants to do today. He lives by that code. And it could be doing the yard. It could be definitely music or cooking, changing it up. Let's try this. Okay, so he comes from that. His wife, on the other hand, his wife is a classical violinist, trained, plays for the San Francisco Ballet Company, plays for Oakland Symphony. She comes from the world that you play exactly nothing more, nothing less than what's on the paper every night, and you do it flawlessly as written, and that's your job. That's her mentality. Yet my dad is, let's change it up. But yet they're husband and wife, and they live together. Okay. And it's like
we just celebrated 30 years.
Wait. Before you add that, the funniest thing is when you're in the car and they're driving, and that mentality starts to crisscross from exactly follow this, Walfredo, this path. And he's like, oh, maybe we can make a left here. And it's like,
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing watching.
Let me say something on drumming. Going back to the 40s, Rich, in New York City, the theaters were very cheap. So you got in for 73 cents at the Radio City Music Hall and saw one of the greatest bands, not bands, orchestra, symphony orchestra, for 73 cents, right? I used to get the first row, and that was where Billy Gladstone was playing, and also Shelley Mayer's dad, who was the timpanist, for free. I mean, I was watching Billy do Ravel's Bolero with one hand, and I couldn't believe it. And then play the timpani with the other hand. And then the control and the beauty of watching him play. There's a guy. Yeah. There's a guy that played My Fair Lady, and he died playing My Fair Lady. For how many years did he do that? More than 50. Wow. It was a record. And all those guys that play on Broadway, they never get mentioned. And they're incredible drummers and percussionists there that you don't even know who they are.
Right
now.
I want to get to talking a little bit about GomBops here, and we've been on for a little over an hour and 20 minutes, and we could talk about the different chapters for a very long time. You have so many wonderful, amazing chapters of your lives that we may have to do part 2 of this. But anyway, I wanted to discuss a little bit with you guys how you rediscovered, I should say, and how did GomBops came back into your life, because they've been around for such a long time. And I'm sure you back in the day had played them and then joined the company again. So let's talk a little bit about how that came back in.
When it comes to, for me, my history with GomBops, I had seen them when I was first starting. We didn't have any for a while. We used to have some LPs, some Cuban drums, and some Slingerland percussion back in the day at the house.
Yeah.
And my brother, Walfredo Jr., got a set of GomBops, and I mean, the great sound, beautiful drums, and I always remember that the rim was like completely innovative at that time. It didn't hurt your hands or anything, and the hide was dark brown. It was almost like a mule instead of regular, calf skin or cow, but it was dark. So those drums, they resonated. They sounded great. He used to use them on. Back in the day in the show when he was playing with Lola Falana, and they were always there. They were his drums, so I couldn't use those drums and take them because they were his. And but I always ended up like thinking, God damn, and I would love to have some of those drums. When years passed and GomBop was always kind of there, dwindling around. It was bought by DW. It was bought by Don and John, and that's when I became completely involved in the developing of GomBops, not just the conga drums, but everything and anything that they were making at that particular time. So Akbar was the main guy that was doing the congas, and he was like the main guy there. I was just a consultant,
right?
But I was and on top of that, an inventor or design creator or recreator of things. So I started, like for instance, the cowbell line that is called the red one.
The Timbero line, yeah. Everybody, Danny was instrumental in helping us develop the Timbero series, which is our red bell series.
The first ones I did every single one of them. So, and how we did that was, and that one and the black one, I forget what the black one is called. Both of those lines, every single one of those bells. The only bell that was there that wasn't my doing was the Alex Acuna bell, which were the silver bells. I don't know if you still have those.
Of course.
But, anyway, all the black ones and all the red ones, that was mine. And then at that particular time, I was trying to get with the tambourines, but Akbar, that's Akbar's thing. So I had to like going back to the gig, who's the boss, So I had to Akbar takes on doing the tambourines, and so it is. I just would put in my 2 cents.
Let me interject there, because one of the things that you've helped us with, everybody, Danny has a line of shakers and tambourine with us, and we did this actually pretty recently in the history. But I think that what we did with you is develop shakers and tambourine that work really well, especially with the big venue situation. But talk a little bit about that, because I think that your tambourine and your shakers are very unique, and they're highly useful in a lot of different contexts. So
yeah, so after that whole thing, and it got changed to Sabian got it, and so I knew that the cowbells were, and the way I look at things is like what works across the board, not just for my situation, but in any situation. So, and that means it has to be warm, but it has to project. It has to cut, but it has to sound good. The timbre of the actual instrument. So I'm always very, very proud that all the cowbells that I helped to to put forth with GomBops, I had something to do with that. Like for instance, the red ones, you match them up against each other. I mean, they're tritone. It's a beautiful pitch between all three. The same thing with the black ones. The tambourines or tambourine, the one I came up with, the same thing with the shaker is I took everything into consideration that's important to me in this particular setting, which is you have to project. You're sometimes having to play against instruments that are going through amplification, and you're not. So how do you do that with a shaker and a tambourine? So they have to be instruments that if you play them in a certain way, they will be heard and they will cut through. But at the same time, that they are warm sounding if you play them soft. Like the shakers, the single and the double shaker that we have with GomBops is my favorite shaker. The weight of it, the way it feels, the sound, it cuts. But at the same time, if you want to play a nice soft bossa nova or samba, man, it's like it's beautiful, articulate. And the same thing with the tambourine. I am a tambourine fanatic. I collect tambourines. I have binfuls of tambourines, and my GomBop tambourine is my go-to tambourine. You have a good instrument when you want to play it in something, whether it's congas, whether it's drums, whether it's the timbre of the tom-tom or that cymbal sounding in a certain way, that bass drum. When it sounds good to you, you will use it in a sparingly type of way, but musically, but you will go to it because you envision that sound. And that's the thing with the shaker and the tambourines that I actually hear it and I want to use it. It's not like, let me just pick up the tambourine and play tambourine. I'm actually hearing that beautiful sound that tambourine emits in that song. And it makes you play it in a completely different way than just, let me just pick up the tambourine and play tambourine because I have nothing to do, or a tambourine here just for the sake of looking like I'm doing something.
You said something about warmth and projection at the same time. That's one of the things about your tambourine that I just wanted to say is that your tambourine not only is something that projects very well, the jingles that we came up with together are beautiful, hand-hammered, warm-sounding jingles, but that still really cut and project. It's a really great combination of all those different things.
And I've tried it on all sorts of different kinds of music, everything from, playing like R&B music to playing definitely like, country shuffles. Shuffles are like one of my favorite things to play with that tambourine.
Yeah.
And man, I wish I had it. I would demonstrate something that so many people.
I just posted a little video of you recently on Facebook of you demoing those instruments.
Oh, the tambourine. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, but yeah, playing, like country, like when we do some of the fast country two beat things.
Yeah.
And I love like the tambourine. And the thing is, you don't even have to go chicka chaka chicka chaka chicka chaka chicka. It's not even that. It's like you could be subtle and yet hit 2 and 4, and it's just this beautiful thing that just mixes with the snare, and it's just the right condiment tambourine to use. And I really
what you said too about movement. Depending on how jingles are mounted into a frame, the way we did it with you, you don't have to use big movements to get a lot of sound. You can do smaller movements, which is really nice. It's very nice.
No. I'm sorry. Let me just finish. That was one of the key factors in making sure not just the jingle sound, not just the weight of the tambourine, but the size of it and how it feels.
Right.
So you can play it in a certain way. Yeah. And the tambourine covers all those bases.
That's right. Hey, Walfredo, I wanted to ask you, getting back to the hybrid thing, because you're known for this and you've inspired so many of us to follow that path and to get creative and to think outside the box when it comes to combining drums and percussion together. In using GomBops now, do you find yourself making all kinds of different combinations when you're doing that, or do you kind of go to a certain setup when you do it? Or because I know you're always, one of the things I wanted to bring up about you, and everybody should know about you, is that you're constantly practicing. You're constantly working on the art form. You wake up and you want to play. It's really unbelievable and inspiring.
I dream about it.
Yeah,
I go to bed, what am I going to do? No, the thing is that I like sounds, pitches, the different ways of playing. Uh, why do you, I always said to everyone, but the word, but why? So this guy shows me this, and I go, but why? Why not change it? Uh, I think that Gon Bops has instruments that are dependable on what you want to do at the time. And I'm saying depends the type of music you're going to play. The depends if you're going to play for an act. What kind of sound do you want from the congas or timbales or the wood jam or the cowbell, like Danny was saying, or the tambourines. I'm more into the three congas, timbales, the wood blocks, and the Danny for my setup. But I think that, for instance, if I want to play something with a trio, nice club date, little bag, the Oreste Filato timbal is amazing, and I use it a lot. And you put the right pitch on it, he gets. I mean, he sounds like Oreste with any timbal.
Right.
See, so you have that little timbal. A lot of people say to me, "Yeah, but the sides, nah, wrong. You could get the cacara, you could put the bell on, you could pitch it, and you could carry it." Okay. Then you have the Alex Acuna timbales, which are amazing timbals. So you could put, I mean, you could jump on it or strong like stand hard, working studio musicians, all the young players that are now working in studios that I hear every night on TV. These guys set up with everything. Then you have the Fiesta timbal, which is a moderate cost timbal, but I use it. That's what I like, and it's a fantastic timbal, incredible, because the timbal, it's up to you. You know how you pitch it, skin you use, sticks you use, technique you use. That it differs from everybody. You could put 10 drummers and 10 timbaleros, and they're all going to be different.
That's so true.
And that's what's good about it, because you're using your head. It's like you're in the driver's seat. That's the car, but you get in and you drive it. The same thing with a timbal. You could put one timbal there, and it's amazing. It shines and wonderful, but you don't get the right sound. You got to get the right sound by. So I see Gon Bops that anything I want, I have. It's sound with the drum set. I could put it on top. I could put it on the side. I could use it like many guys do it. Jimmy Bradley, for instance, on the side. That's a very way of using it. I used to put it on top of the bass drum. And I did that in 1951. Timbale with the tilt.
Yeah.
And they were made in Cuba. When I recorded a Cuban jazz album, I was using those timbales. And they tilt. So you could have, they're not flat because they're not flat. Yeah.
Tom-tom.
Yeah. So I've used all kinds of timbales, but I think that Gon Bops has everything you need, everything you want is there for you to use.
Yeah. So we're an hour and a half into this, guys. I think that we're going to wrap soon, but I just wanted to before we say goodbye to everybody, Danny, you've done a couple of things, giving back to the community, things that are I want people to know about. One of the things that you created was Dayglow Music, which is a foundation that helps kids using instruments. I know we could talk a long time about it, and also your efforts lately to help first responders. So I just wanted everyone to know a little bit about what you're doing lately, because I find it really important.
I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I find myself way busier today than I am normally, like when we're out on tour, because it's like from the moment I wake up, it's just nonstop doing stuff. Whether it's recording, learning music, bettering myself, making sure that I'm more prepared, or after we come out of this pandemic, that I am better in what I do as far as like practicing and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I do. I run a music education charity by the name of Dayglow Music, that we teach kids music for free in this local area. I do a lot of outreach programs as well. We use music definitely to help develop and instill life values that we so need to reinforce in our youth. So I do that, but right now, since the pandemic, we haven't been able to do summer programs. So I just been organizing the charity, so that way when we are able and we come out of this, that we are way more organized. At the beginning of the pandemic, I started making face shields, and face shields from drum heads that I had for the tour, and because I saw some of the shields that some of the first responders had, and I ordered a few, and they were the same plastic Mylar. So I ended up making a bunch, and I donated them to local first responders. And then I went and did a couple of events, music events, social distancing, applying disinfecting, wearing the mask. And I realized that we weren't getting the same result, that I wasn't getting the same response. And the main reason is because we're just not communicating the way we normally communicate with a mask covering our faces. And, it's like the first thing that we're taught out the womb, how to communicate, is through our facial expressions. So by taking that out, how can we communicate properly with each other? For me, I'm hard of hearing. I read lips. So right now it's really hard to do that with a normal mask. So I started coming up with different ways that we can change that. Here, I got one right here. So I came up with a company called Mini Shield USA. And this is one of the shields. We have three products, or two products. The third one's coming out in a few weeks, but this is the first one.
Yep.
I don't know if you could see it well. But anyway, so what it does, it offers a shield right in front of your mouth. So that way all your droplets are being caught right here. It's open in the bottom, so you still have to disinfect. You still have to apply social distancing, but at least now you can communicate. You can hear me, okay, right? Perfect with the shield. So this is the first model, and we call this the social. And the reason it's called the social is so we can go out and be more social with each other. So we can see each other and communicate in a different way than we cannot with a regular face mask. The other one is it's called the professional, and it comes from underneath here and it goes up. So it catches all the droplets down here, and it still offers a shield. Okay, so the reason I came up with that is more like for someone that's on stage and people are down, let's say right now the fans are looking up, you wouldn't want something like this because it's open down here, right? So the other one is completely covered in the bottom. So, but you're able to talk, you're able to communicate completely clear, unobtrusive, lightweight, never compromising our facial expressions. That's the most important thing. And then the next model comes underneath your chin. Right now we're working with the school district here try to get into the schools, either for teachers, either for teachers that are working with children that are, with language issues and linguistic, English, Spanish, all that kind of stuff. And this is more like for outside, for like a coach for security. We're also working with the court system here in Fayetteville to try to get it in there, because you need to see people when they give their oath, when they give their testimony. We're also working with the sheriff department. So it's moving. That's one of the ways, that I'm working, filling up my time, is doing something that somehow or another gives back, but at the same time, making yourself better. So when this pandemic is over, it's like, I practice, I've got this, I'm helping this. And look, next week, I'm going to do a food drive to give people in the entertainment industry, our entertainment industry that has been decimated. We're going to get food from the couple of different charities, Midwest Food Bank and Musically Fed. And we're going to get together to give people in the entertainment industry some food, so they can a little bit of assistance. Like a handout, but it's just some help. And it really is not just about giving food. It's about demonstrating to people that we need to be here for each other, no matter what we look like, no matter what our political values are. No matter, man, this is the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Here we are together. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from. We have to support each other.
Danny, that's a great way for people to think about the village of what we do as a village, to help each other through these kinds of things. I want to just segue what you just said into it. We've gotten a lot of great comments during the show today, and you can see them when the show is finished today. Everybody, it will be archived on both Facebook and YouTube, and you can tune in and watch it again if you want. You'll see all the different comments from everybody. And both of you guys, when you get a chance to look at the comments, you're going to see a lot of our friends have made wonderful comments and hellos to you. So you'll see that. But I wanted to put this one up on the screen, Danny, because this was pertaining to your philanthropy. And this is from Luis Gandia. You can see here, Danny did a great job. Labor of help and hope in Puerto Rico when the hurricane hit 3 years ago. Thank you, Danny. So I just wanted to put that up so you could see a thank you from Luis.
Thank you, Luis.
I know you did a lot for the Puerto Ricans, and we're all very thankful for that. We're at a point now where we have to wrap, you guys. But you know what? I wanted to say also that I want to have you both individually as guests on our new podcast show. That'll give us more one-on-one individual time to really dig into some more things. So everybody. We have a new podcast show called The Percussion Loft, and it's available on Spotify and also on Apple Podcasts and also on the GomBops website. So one day we will have each of these gentlemen as guests on our show, and we can really dig into some other things together. So I don't know, guys. With that, I think I just have to thank you. This has been an amazing interview. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And any last things you would like to say before we sign off? Either one of you, both of you?
Dad?
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Rich.
No, here.
We'll do it any time. I mean, I got 87 years of history. So I'm going to say here, 5 years in front of the TV. A lot of stories about great drummers and what to do, what not to do. I would say for the young drummers that there's a lot of incredible talent out there that I hear every day. Just keep studying, keep playing the piano if you are. Learn all the folklores of every country, and that's the way to go around it. Put it on the drum set. If you hear a conga or this or that, say, how would that sound on the drum set? Go to the drum set, play it with your hands.
Yeah.
But I love the new people, the new Justin Bieber that I hear every day. wow, look at this kid. He's amazing. He's amazing. So we got to look up to those kids. I just
Yeah.
give him a couple of stories, but they could teach us a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Great. All right. Great advice. Danny?
Call me.
Just a last minute thought. These times, although for some is difficult, these are times for us to shine. These are times for us to help each other out, to look for, and this is a great opportunity for us to come out of this knowing that we care for each other. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, although hard and difficult, for sure, different. But this is a great opportunity for us to be there for each other. That's one thing. And then the last thing is something that I always marvel about my father. And that is that no matter what day of the week I call him, it doesn't matter what time of the day or night, he's always trying to do something that he could not do yesterday. He's always trying to learn and something, or trying to experiment to do something that he could not do yesterday. So never ending, constant student, always learning.
That's it. That's the best.
Look at this. Look at this.
Ka-chow.
Ka-chow and I were like son and father and son. And he was just talking to him, you learn.
Yeah.
You didn't have to play. Just watching him, you learn.
Yes.
And he told me one day we could live all our lives and we would still have to learn all the rhythms and instruments that are in this world of ours. And there are many. There are many cultures with drums.
That's right.
A lot.
Gentlemen, can't thank you enough for doing this with us, and also, of course, for being a part of the GomBops family. You know how much it means to us, and you know how much it means to me, getting the chance to work with you both. And we have a lot of years together left, so let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
Hang in there for just a second. I'll be right back with you both after I end the broadcast, and we'll do a wrap-up conversation. So I'll be right back with you, and thank you, guys.
Thank you, and thank everybody out there.
Same here.
Thank you.
I'll be here.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. And if you're interested in seeing the show again, it is being recorded, and it'll be available and archived on both of our Facebook and YouTube channels, so you can see it there. And thank you so much for your beautiful comments. I just wanted to tell you the next broadcast we're doing is on November 19th, which is in 2 weeks on a Thursday, part 2 of this Familia series, which is going to feature the Quintero family, which we will have with us Luisito, Roberto, and Anderson Quintero. So stay tuned. I will be announcing that the time of that and everything on our social media the week of that show. So in the meantime, stay safe, and thank you so much for being with us. See you all soon. Bye-bye.